looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is Thursday, May the 30th, 2024. It is currently 3 p.m. Central Time, and I am coming to you live from the Theology Central studio, located right here in Abilene, Texas. Now, first, the good news. The good news is this has been the most successful month ever for us broadcasting on the Sermons 2.0 app, Church One app, and the Sermon Audio website, right? So this has been our most successful month ever for Sermon Audio. There's a high probability, I don't know how far we'll get before midnight tonight. We should be somewhere in the 8,000s. There's no way we can get to 9,000. There's no way. But if there's anything you haven't listened to of ours, go download it now so that we can get those numbers to 9,000. It doesn't really mean anything other than it just shows a lot of people are listening. So it's been the most successful month ever for a Sermon Audio. For Spreaker, we were contacted today by Spreaker. That's our podcasting hosting site. And we reached 250,000 downloads and stream. So this has been a very successful month as far as numbers. Now, what does those numbers actually translate into? A lot of people think, ooh, you got all of those numbers. That means something. It really doesn't mean anything, right? Because out of 250,000 or out of 8,000 or 9,000, that a small number of people will actually contact you. The greater number will be those who have a criticism or a complaint or they don't like you. That will be the greatest number of emails you get, are typically the negative ones. And then a small group of people who like you will contact you. That doesn't translate. Those numbers don't necessarily translate into people supporting or giving. It just means a lot of people are listening, which is great news, but you really sometimes don't know what it means. Like, you can look at the numbers and go, yeah, I'm accomplishing something. But then at the same time, you're like, well, you don't really know if you're accomplishing anything, because 90% of the people you'll never hear from. And you don't know if they listen to you one time or they're going to listen to you a second time. You just don't know, but it's still good news. 250,000 for Spreaker we'll be over 8,000. I'm going to be confident. We're like at 7,900 and something right now. So we'll be over 8,000. I don't know if we can get to 9,000, but those are huge numbers for us. Now, I know there's other broadcasters on Sermons 2.0 and the Sermon Audio website that have, who knows, 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, 500,000. They have gigantic numbers. Okay. So we're we are a very small fish in amongst very large fish who are very much more successful and popular. And I understand why, because my approach is so radically different than the others. I mean, in some ways, that what I like about being so different and my approach being so different is that means I'm not really competing with anybody, right? I'm not trying to do what you do. I'm trying to do something completely different, offer something somewhat unique, and hopefully it's beneficial. Hopefully it's beneficial. Now, that's the good news, though. The numbers are the good news. The bad news is, the bad news is I have to do this broadcast because now things are getting really confusing and complicated. And the bad news is maybe by the time I'm even done with this one. Now, this is not one of those that's going to be controversial. It's just becoming somewhat convoluted and confusing. The best way I can describe what we are in, have you ever seen, maybe in a television show or in a movie, it'll show someone who's becoming obsessed with some conspiracy theory. And then they walk into the person's room and they got like newspaper clippings everywhere, and they got string going from one thing connecting to another thing, or they got a marker where they're drawing lines to this, and you're like, what has happened? And it's just this whole convoluted mess on their wall, and you're like, what? Well, that's what it kind of feels like right now. I feel like I need a big chart on the wall, and it's like, okay, this person is connected to this person, and this person is connected to this person, and this person is connected to this person, and okay, wait, this person did this, and this person, but this person person is related to this person, and this person killed that person, but that person had killed that person, and so this person is killing that person. And you're like, what is happening? It's all confusing. It's all convoluted. And I think even many of you admitted and acknowledged, some of you who emailed me, that, man, there's just so many names spinning around. Like, I need to write all of these down. So I think some of you told me you're making a list of the names because you really need to, and it's all confusing. And what bothers me is that may actually be detrimental to what I'm trying to accomplish. On the other hand, I'm kind of frustrated with myself because what I was attempting to do, I think, was the right thing to do. I think it was the smart thing to do. But because of what I was attempting to do, I didn't really run with it. And because I didn't really run with it, I was leaving out a lot of vital information that I should have gotten to. Now, we did the sermon review yesterday was awesome because that sermon was amazing because it went even further. Well, see, I wasn't chasing some of this information, which I should have been chasing, but at the same time, I was trying to stay true to what I was trying to accomplish. It will all make sense in a minute. I say all of that to say the bad news is I think this is still maybe a little convoluted and maybe even more confusing. So I don't know. I still feel like we may be getting further and further away from what I'm trying to accomplish. So the bad news is I've got good numbers, but this may be the type of broadcast that makes me lose some of those numbers. Not because it's controversial, just because I think a lot of people will be like, I don't care about this person and that person and this person. Give me something more practical. This may not be as practical, but I think we're trying to do something very important. All right. So remember, it's summer 2024. Summer 2024 has begun. Okay, maybe not officially, but it's begun. Summer 2024 has begun. And so for this summer, we are starting off at least with the first 30 days, making it all about the book of Proverbs. So for the Sermons 2.0 app challenge, you're supposed to download the Sermons 2.0 app, and you're supposed to be looking up random sermons on the book of Proverbs. Great. To kind of facilitate that, to supplement that, I gave you a quiz. And I gave you some things to work on. And a lot of this was giving us a little background, a little information about Solomon. And the reason I wanted to do that is because when you open up your Bible to the book of Proverbs, you read this very important verse. In fact, it's the very first verse of the book of Proverbs. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. The Proverbs of Solomon. And I immediately presented all of you a very important question. Why Solomon? Why is Solomon tasked by God, used by God to write a book of Proverbs, these very short statements that are to convey, that are to give us very important information about wisdom, to help us obtain wisdom, to help us understand, to help us grow in our understanding, to make us wise, to help us avoid foolishness? Why would he choose Solomon? Because as I keep saying, Solomon may be the most extravagant, foolish man in all the Bible. His foolishness is so extravagant. It's so exaggerated. It's almost like hyperbole. So why would God use him to give us Proverbs? Now, how typically preachers handle this? Well, God chose Solomon to write the book of Proverbs because Solomon was the wisest man of them all. Well, you may want to say he's the wisest man, but he was the most extravagantly foolish wisest man who ever lived, because you cannot deny all of his foolishness. So I wanted to ask that question. I wanted to approach it a little differently. So I said, let's go back and look at some background information on Solomon. Now, the goal was to focus on Solomon, right? That was the goal. So I think the question I asked in the quiz was, what advice did David give Solomon? And that pointed everyone back to 1 Kings chapter 2. So when we got into 1 Kings chapter 2, the first thing we did is we covered the first 4 verses, right? 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. Now the days of David drew near that he should die, and he charged Solomon his son, saying, I go the way of all the earth. Be strong, therefore. Prove yourself a man. Keep the charge of the Lord your God, to walk in his way, to keep his statutes, his commandments, his judgments, his testimonies, as it is written and the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all that you do and whatever and wherever you turn, that the Lord may fulfill his word which he spoke concerning me, saying, if your sons take heed to their way, to walk before me in the truth with all their heart and with all their soul, he said, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. So we looked at that advice, and we immediately were confronted with the fact Solomon did not do any of this. He did not keep any of this, because let's just remind ourselves of the basic things Solomon did. He was a serial adulterer, not a one-time, two-time, three-time, four-time. He was in perpetual adultery because he had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wives and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of concubines. Perpetual adulterer, a perpetual polygamist, and then he became an idolater. That doesn't even count anything else he did. So he was in perpetual sin. There's no way to get around it. Perpetually in sin. And he never did anything to remedy that. In fact, it was the multitude of women that turned his heart from God. So he was extravagantly foolish. So I wanted to go back to that just to give us a little background. Okay, here's the advice David gave to Solomon. Did Solomon keep this? He did not. So then that leads us back to the question, why Solomon? Well, for some weird reason, I wasn't really thinking about it. I thought, you know what, but does David's advice really stop there? Well, maybe he goes from his advice to he gives some commands or some orders or some directions to Solomon. Well, let's add that to the discussion. So we did another broadcast where we started looking at verse 5 and following. And then what we have here is that David treats Solomon almost like his hitman. Hey, I'm going to give you a list of people you need to kill. And you're like, this is crazy. And the first one was, moreover, you know also what Joab, the son of Zeruiah, did to me. Moreover, you know also what Joab, the son of Zeruiah, what he did to me. And now, Zeruiah, I was like, okay, this is Joab, the son of Zeruiah. And immediately I was like, okay, I didn't really process exactly the best way to approach this, right? And my first thought was Joab, the son of Zeruiah. Make sure I get the name right. Make sure in fact, I became almost fixated with making sure I get the name right. And then I started looking through. I'm like, oh, there's all these other names. There's Zeruiah. There is Abner. There's Ner. There's Amasa. There's Jether. There's Barzillai. There's the Gileadite. There's Shimei. There's the Benjamite, there's Adonai, and there's all these other names. And so I was more like, okay, get the names right. But I wasn't really thinking of, okay, now wait a minute. We're trying to get a little bit background to Solomon. This will provide background. So I immediately this is the way my brain went. Let's look at what happens here in relationship more to Solomon. Let's keep it about Solomon as much as possible. Solomon is basically being used as a hitman. What does it say about Solomon? Solomon, the perpetual adulterer. Solomon, the perpetual polygamist. Solomon, the idolater. Becomes Solomon, the hitman. He's now being used by David. Kill these people. Right? So we wanted to get a little background, but I didn't really, when I saw Joab, the son of Zeruiah, I should immediately oh, wait. This complicates this entire situation. But now we have to kind of go even further back and see Joab, the son of Zeruiah, his connection to David. Right? But I didn't think about it. But when we did the sermon review yesterday, that's what that pastor did. Now, for me, on one hand, it was great. It was awesome. It was I told everyone how amazing I thought that sermon was. I think that pastor did an amazing job. Nothing but applause for that. But it opened up all of this discussion. Now, what do we do? We're going to have to we got to finish up the story of Joab. We got to see what happens, because I kind of left it as an open-ended question. When David tells Solomon to kill Joab, I kind of left it as, well, does he do it? Does he do it? In that sermon that we reviewed yesterday, it was more like, what did Joab do? And let's go back and look at all the things Joab did, right? And And then let's look, how is Joab related to David? And it became more about David. Even that pastor, what he was attempting to do was give background information about Solomon. But when he followed this all the way through, then he almost left Solomon completely. He almost forgot Solomon completely, which is kind of where I find myself. It's like, well, now what do we do? Now what do we do? We've got to connect this to Solomon. Because the whole point is, why Solomon? Why did he write the Proverbs? And we're finding out just in this little section that, man, this whole section here, I mean, it reads like something out of a movie. The pastor yesterday, when we reviewed his sermon, he's like, this is something the mafia would do. He made a little joke. What do you learn from all of this? You have to learn discernment when you decide to kill someone. And everyone in the church got really silent. And obviously his joke did not go over well because I don't think people like the rawness of what's going on here. I don't think there's anything godly going on here. There's nothing spiritual going on here. These are individuals killing people or wanting people killed. And I think many of it is for the most selfish reasons. And you can try to Disneyfy it. You can try to make it a Hallmark movie. You can try to do whatever you want with it. You can try to Christianize it. You can try to make these people little flannel graphs in a Sunday school classroom. You can do all these things, but the reality is these are real people. Even amongst God's people, we see some of this horrible things going on. And this situation is just crazy. So we're going to try to finish out our look at Joab. All right? We're going to try to finish this out. Now, the last time we talked, not when we weren't doing a sermon review, we talked about how King Solomon had his brother killed because his brother showed up and, you say, what verse is it? In verse 13. Now, Adonijah, the son of Haggith, came to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon. So she said, do you come peaceably? Now, remember, he has a different mother, but this is, in a sense, his half brother who comes and says, hey, I want to marry this woman, right? Now, remember, the reason he has a different mother than Solomon is because David had 8 wives and concubines. Okay, we could get into that whole situation. So, and then he perceives Adonijah trying to marry this woman because he's the oldest, as his attempt to try to take, did I say David? Adonijah is Solomon's older brother from a different mother because David had multiple wives, obviously then having kids with these different wives and concubines. Okay. So Solomon sees Adonijah's attempt to marry this woman. Now Adonijah, the son of Haggith, came to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, saying, I come in peace. And then he says, he wants to marry Abishag, the Shumanite. So Adonijah, the son of Haggith, comes to Bathsheba. Bathsheba is Solomon's mother. The Haggith is Adonijah's mother, but the same father, David. All right, again, we got to keep all of this straight. Again, some of this will get us further and further away from Solomon. How far do we go into all of this? But for this story, the bottom line is Solomon sees this as a threat to his throne, that by marrying this woman, and he's being the older, he's going to try to make some claim to the throne. And so he has him killed. There's no quarter, there's no mercy, he has him killed. And it's pretty crazy. And we read about it in verse 25, 1 Kings 2:25. So King Solomon sent by the hand of Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, and he struck him down and he died. He killed Adonijah, his brother, or his half-brother. Right? So we talked about all of that. That's the last thing we talked about. There was Solomon having someone killed, and that killing now he's just going to go from killing to killing to now the killing is going to begin. All right. So Solomon not only was a serial adulterer, not only was a serial polygamist, there's no way to get around, and he was an idolater. You may not want to use the word murder, but he's killing people, and you may want to justify it. I know a lot of people want to justify it and say, and a lot of Bible commentaries do. Well, this is the right thing to do. This is there is so many deceptive motives in all of this. It's impossible. And if you don't believe it, just go to why David wanted Joab killed in the first place. There's some revenge going on. There's some other things going on. So let's remind us a little bit about Joab, and then we're going to see Solomon having the man killed. Well, I'm going to say Solomon killed him because it's all because of Solomon that he's killed. Solomon uses someone else, just as David tries to use someone else to kill. David wants to use Solomon to kill people, and Solomon's going to use other people to kill people. All right, so we could get into all of that, but let's just see how this all plays out. Now, again, as I said, this is very difficult, and there's all these names. And it can get all confusing. So I'm going to try to be careful not to get back into all the names. I'm going to try to keep us very simple. Solomon and Joab. Now, Joab, the main thing you need to know about him is his relationship to David. So here's a little information about Joab. Are you ready? Joab, the son of Zeruiah, was a prominent figure in the Old Testament known for his military prowess and loyalty to King David. All right. Now, Joab was the son of Zeruiah. Now, just keep that in mind. But he's a prominent figure in the Old Testament. He plays a bigger role than when I first saw his name, Joab, the son of Zeruiah. Again, I got so preoccupied with Zeruiah. In fact, I started calling Joab Zeruiah. I think maybe once or twice I even slipped up. Not because I didn't know that he's not Zeruiah. Just I was so focused on the name Zeruiah because I wanted to make sure I got it right. That I was like, do we go pursue, what I should have done is just said, you know what? We're going to do a side study, right? Where we're trying to get this background information on Solomon, but now we've been confronted with this man by the name of Joab, the son of Zeruiah. So what we need to do is do a side study on Joab. That's what I should have done, right? But I was so let's just get through this information and how this connects to Solomon, because our ultimate goal is to figure out why Solomon. That's the problem when you do this, because you have so much information, and especially someone who plays a prominent role. So let's do a quick synopsis, a snapshot of Joab, the son of Zeruiah. We've been talking about him a lot. Let's talk a little bit more. His background. Joab was the son of Zeruiah, the sister of King David. He was a key commander in David's army and played a significant role in various military campaigns. So let's make it very clear. Joab is related to David. Joab is, in a sense, David's nephew. That's his sister's son. So he's got a family connection. That may explain a lot of why whenever he's upset with Joab, he doesn't get rid of him. He doesn't kill him. He doesn't get rid of him. He may embarrass him. He may shame him. He may humiliate him for some of the things he did. But he may even put the blame on Joab at times. Hey, Joab did this, not me. Everyone be mad at Joab. But Joab stayed. The thing is how loyal Joab is to David. And you're going to see that. Right? So he's right there. There's a family connection. Just keep that in mind. And so it's kind of shocking when you get to 1 Kings 2, verse 5, where David calls Solomon and says, hey, you know what Joab, the son of Zeruiah, did to me? And what he did to the two commanders of the armies of Israel, to Abner, the son of Ner, and Amasa, the son of Jether, whom he killed, and he shed the blood of war in peacetime, and put the blood of war on his belt that was around his waist, and on his sandals that was on his feet. Therefore do according to your wisdom, and do not let his gray hair go down to the grave in peace. Basically, Solomon, be my hitman, take him out, kill him. And you're like, what? And now, David looks like it's for a just reason. Remember what he did to Abner and what he did to Amasa? But is that really the reason? This is where it gets very complicated, because there's a lot of things about Joab. All right. For example, all right. So his background, he's related to David. As a military leader, Joab was distinguished himself as a skilled military leader, leading David's army in battles against enemies of Israel. He was known for his strategic thinking and courage on the battlefield. This man is a soldier. David has needed him over and over. Throughout David's reign, he needed Joab because he was great at what he did. He was a soldier and he knew how to kill the enemy. So isn't it convenient that David doesn't take out Joab throughout his life, but now David is about to die. And Solomon is about to take the throne. Solomon is now going to be ruling. And so David's like, get rid of Joab. It's almost as if I don't need him anymore. He did all the dirty work. He got his hands dirty. He got his hands bloody. Now you get rid of him. Now I know everyone's going to be like, no, this is all beautiful and perfect. And everybody sing Kumbaya. And they had a praise and worship service and they all believe in God. There's some ugly stuff going on here. David gets to the end of his life. He's like, take him out. Now he points to some things he did, but some of the things he did, when Joab kills Abner, it's because Abner had killed Joab's brother. And when he kills Amasa, it's because he sees Amasa as a possible threat. Now, I'm not saying that makes everything right, but David acts on the same motivations, and I think in some ways Solomon acts on the same motivations. But Joab was involved in some controversies, but please note the controversies. Joab was involved in several controversial incidences, including the deaths of Abner and Absalom, David's rebellious son. David was not happy with the fact of Joab's involvement with Absalom's death. Was not happy in any way, shape, or form. But he doesn't kill Joab. He doesn't get rid of Joab. Why not? Now, some people will say because he was a man after God's own heart. He was merciful and gracious. Well, he's not so merciful and gracious now. He wants the man dead. So why did he keep him alive? Because he needed him. He needed Joab. Joab may have been dangerous. Joab may have been, a little unpredictable, but you knew one thing. He knew how to kill the enemy. He was courageous in battle. He he was successful. So David keeps him around. And now David's about to die. Now you got to get rid of him. And he doesn't mention anything about Absalom here. But when you go read the story as we listened to yesterday, David was so upset over the death of Absalom. So you have to call into question his motives here. His motives, we can say, this is about justice. And this is or is this about revenge? Now, this is where the story yesterday, I completely had forgotten this. I remembered, as soon as they started going about Absalom, I'm like, okay, I remember that, right? But again, Joab, the son of Zeruiah, I almost blocked out a lot of stuff because I was just like, okay, what did Joab did? Solomon's going to have this man killed. Does he have this man killed? I just wanted to make it very simple so that we can move on. I already wanted to be in chapter 3 when Solomon is promised that wisdom, right? Is given that wisdom by God. I wanted to go through 2 relatively quick and just say, here's some basic things, look them up. But I could not stop because the more we get into this, you get into one name and it opens up a door to all kinds of things. So in a roundabout way, that sermon review forced us here, right? So here we go. Are you ready for this? So Joab was involved in several controversial issues, right, including the death of Abner and Absalom. And Joab, the son of Zeruiah. I don't even know how to read this. I have a hard time even reading this. He played a role in the killing of Uriah the Hittite to cover up David's affair with Bathsheba. He helped to cover it up. He was involved in the whole thing that led to Uriah dying. And throughout that, it sounds like Joab always remained loyal to David. He always remained loyal. So he killed people who needed to be killed. He fought the battles. He fought the war. Anybody got near David, Joab was there. And David kept Joab because it was politically expedient. It was probably pragmatically expedient to be successful in battle and war. And he kept Joab around because, well, Joab would even help him cover up and get rid of someone that he needed to cover up his affair. And now we get to 1 Kings 2, and David is old, and he's about to leave, and he's like, Solomon, you know what that man did to me? Wait a minute. What that man did to me? Hey, David, how about what that man did for you? And he's like, take him out. Yeah. You know why you wanted to? You don't need him anymore. And oh yeah, he's the one who try to help cover up your affair. Oh, come on. The whole thing just seems like what? And the whole thing seems so wrong. Now we could ask ourselves, what does Solomon know about everything that Joab, the son of Zeruiah, did? How much does he know? We could get into a discussion there. But David's getting ready to be gone. And so he's like, get rid of the man. Now, the next part is where we're about to be. So, in 1 Kings 2, David gets ready to the end of his life. So we read the part where he says, moreover, you know also what Joab, the son of Zeruiah, did to me. Again, that's just crazy. What he did to me? How about what he did for you? Did you just forget that, David? Yeah, he killed your son Absalom. Let's just make it very clear. Your son Absalom was trying to kill everyone else. And when Joab was involved in the killing of Absalom, and when David hears about it and David is so upset, remember, Joab goes in and Joab does not hold back on David. Whoa. You're upset over the guy who would have you killed and would have all of us killed? You love the one who hates you, but you seem to hate the people who love you. Joab is not happy about the situation. So yeah, you could say, did he do that to you, David, or did he do that for you? Now, I know David did not want that, and we could get into a whole discussion, but I just think it's almost like Joab is just being seen as the fall guy here. Now, I'm not saying all of Joab's actions were right. He seemed like to be a brutal, vicious, violent man, but sometimes that's what makes someone a good soldier too, right? Especially in that time and day where you weren't operating under the Geneva Convention or anything. In other words, David benefited from his brutality and his viciousness. I don't think there's any way to get around that. But he's like, okay, hey, Solomon. So David is talking. You know what Joab, the son of Zeruiah, did to me. And what he did to the two commanders of the armies of Israel, to Abner, the son of Ner, and Amasa, the son of Jether, whom he killed. Now, he did kill them. But you could argue that part of the reason he had one killed is because one killed his brother. Now, David wants Joab killed because of what Joab had done to him. Is he not operating under the same principle? The same kind of sense of revenge? I know people are going to say, he's a man after God's own heart. People who are people after God's own heart are still sinners. That's what we always seem to forget when we study this. And then Amasa was much more maybe for political expediency and trying to maintain his own position. So he says, therefore, do according to your wisdom. And see, that's what I really wanted to focus on there because I thought that would get back to Solomon. But at this point, we're too far gone. All right. And do not let his gray hair go down to the grave in peace. All right. Now, jump all the way down. Now, remember, in chapter 2, verse 13, Adonijah, the son of Haggith, comes to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, and he wants to marry this woman. What's her name again? Abishag, the Shumanite. Solomon is very upset about the situation, doesn't like it, and so King Solomon sent by the hand of Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, and struck him down, and he died. So Solomon kills his brother. Because he sees his brother as a threat. Now, wait a minute. Joab had he killed someone because he saw him as a threat. And in a weird, like, David sees someone as a threat, you can have him killed. Solomon sees someone as a threat, you can have him killed. But Joab dies. Was Joab dying because he killed someone he perceived to be a threat? Or is Joab dying because, I don't know, because he killed Absalom, David's son? Or is he having killed because he has dirt on what David did to cover up his transgressions? Now you could say, well, the affair had already been exposed, but was all the details exposed? That's a question for you to answer. I've already had this conversation. You can go look at that. When David's affair is exposed and the cover up, how much of it is how David had the man killed? Is it all clearly articulated? Is that given to everyone? Because Joab would have known exactly how he had the man killed. That's just the question. But Adonijah, dead. Solomon's already killed number one. Now here we go. 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 28. Now we're going to hear the rest of the story. Are you ready? Here's how it's going to go down. Then news came to Joab, for Joab had defected to Adonijah, though he had not defected to Absalom. All right. Joab did not defect to Absalom. He stayed true to David. But here he seems to have defected to Adonijah. Now, if we look at this verse in other translations, let me pull this up really quick. If I pull this up really quick, I'll show you how this is translated so you can clearly understand the language. I had another Bible here with a different translation, but I left it across the room. So I'll just pull it up on the iPad. Here we go. All right. Here we go. There we go. 1 Kings 2:28, New International Version. When the news reached Joab, who had conspired with Adonijah, though not with Absalom. New Living Translation, Joab had not joined Absalom's earlier rebellion, but he had joined Adonijah's rebellion. ESV, when the news came to Joab, for Joab had supported Adonijah, although he had not supported Absalom. So Joab had been, he's kind of, in a sense, he's on Adonijah's side, who obviously is attempting to try to get the throne, right? He's the older brother. He's trying to get the throne. And Solomon is like, no. And he'd already tried to get the throne. And then we could go through everything that happens with Adonijah. But the bottom line is everything Adonijah tried to do to get the throne, he doesn't get the throne. He's killed. Boom. He's gone. Now, Joab hears this. He's like, oh no, Adonijah is gone. He knows, if Solomon killed his own brother, he may be coming for me. I may be David's nephew, but now Solomon may be coming for me because he now may perceive me to be a threat. And considering Joab was very military minded, he probably would have seen, well, that would probably be the thing to do. So what happens? So Joab fled to the tabernacle of the Lord and took hold of the horns of the altar. So he goes straight into the tabernacle and goes to the horns of the altar. Now, does this show fear? Does this show cowardness? Does this show a strategic decision? If I go here, I'm seeking mercy. I'm seeking forgiveness. What does it demonstrate? What do you think it demonstrates that Joab goes there? Or it's just a strategic thinking, hey, he's not going to come get me here. He's not going to come kill me here, right? We'll see what happens. And King Solomon was told Joab had fled to the tabernacle of the Lord. There he is by the altar. Then Solomon sent Benaiah. Benaiah now becomes like the hitman for Solomon, it seems. The son of Jehoiada, saying, go strike him down. So Benaiah went into the tabernacle of the Lord and said to him, thus says the king, come out. Hey, come on. Like, it seems like Benaiah doesn't want to go into the tabernacle to do this. So he tells him, hey, to come out. And he said, no, but I will die here. And Benaiah brought back word to the king saying, thus said Joab, and thus he answered me. Then the king said to him, do as he has said and strike him down and bury him, that you may take away from me and from the house of my father the innocent blood which Joab shed. Now, so now that sounds so righteous, right? Solomon's like, get rid of this man because he shed innocent blood. Well, some of the innocent blood he helped shed was for your father David's benefit, to help cover up his affair. David had innocent blood shed. So if we're going to start killing people who had innocent bloodshed, I mean, maybe the list would start getting long, right? Is Solomon now? He sounds so righteous, but is it more because is he upset because of what Joab has done in the past, or is he simply using that to go, hey man, you went with my brother? You were trying to get my throne, or you're going to pay? Is it just to maintain his own power and prestige and his own position? Because, I mean, some of the innocent blood Joab shed, one of those individuals that he helped be a part of killing or allowing to die just happens to be, I don't know, an innocent man. Yeah, I know. See, I told you there was going to be bad. And good news, I had big numbers in May. The bad news, I'm going to have low numbers in June, because nobody likes when you look at these texts and you look at them in a very raw way. We're supposed to cover this all up with some Christianese and make it all sound so wonderful and nice. This is messed up what's happening here. There's nothing about godly wisdom in any of this. Anybody comes at me saying, oh, this is godly wisdom, and this is the same fleshly, worldly wisdom that you see in the world. You see this in the mob. You see it in terrorist organizations, street gangs. This is killing people for all kinds of messed up reasons. And it just demonstrates that even amongst God's people, these kind of horrible things happen. So let's continue. All right. So he says, the king said to him, do as he said and strike him down, bury him, that you may take away from me and from my house of my father the innocent blood of which Joab shed. Right. Yeah. The innocent. Oh boy. Right. So the Lord will return his blood on his head, because he struck down two men more righteous and better than he, and killed them with the sword. Yeah. I think David had a man killed who was more righteous than he. Right? Oh, but let's forget about that, right? Let's forget about that. Okay. Abner, the son of Ner, the commander of the army of Israel, and Amasa, the son of Jether, the commander of the army of Judah, though my father David did not know it. Now, he's using the reasons for having him killed that was given to him by David. But I don't think David's motives are so pure, because he starts off by saying, you know what he did to me? Yeah, Absalom. That's what he's referring to. And of course, his involvement in having Uriah killed just seems to be conveniently forgotten in all of this. And his loyalty to David is getting ready to be repaid by dying, is what's about to be repaid for. All right. Their blood shall therefore return upon the head of Joab and upon the head of his descendants forever. This is like David's household, David's family. Like we're going to remove any association with all of these bad people. I mean, we're the good people. We're going to get rid of all the bad people. But upon David and his descendants, upon his house and his throne, there shall be peace forever from the Lord. Hey, everything's going to be good for us. Now, this man who did nothing but serve and loyal and defeat your enemies and help your father cover up his own transgressions, well, this man has to die. Now, I understand. Now, you could say, from a purely pragmatic standpoint, you could say, well, Joab shouldn't have sided with Adonijah. He made the wrong decision. But just please note, there's nothing spiritual about this. This is all just fleshly, worldly, pragmatic, political decision-making, which, in a sense, overlooks their own transgressions. So Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, went up and struck and killed him, and he was buried in his own house in the wilderness. The king put Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, in his place over the army, and the king put Zadok, the priest, in the place of Abiathar. There's hit number 2. Solomon, he kills his brother. Now he goes after Joab, the son of Zeruiah, nephew to David, the man who was loyal to David, the man who fought great military battles and was victorious, helped defend the enemy against David, gave David great military victories, helped David try to cover up his own affair. And he dies. Solomon now has killed 2 people. And I think we're getting ready to see possibly maybe a third. Because remember Shimei, who David said he would not kill. David said, I'm not going to kill you. But when I get to the end of my life, I'm just going to have my son, take you out. Why Solomon? That's the question. So when we get into all of this, in some ways going further back into this makes the question even more important. Well, I'm going to say it again. I'm going to read Proverbs chapter 1, verse 1. The Proverbs of Solomon. Why Solomon? Solomon was the most extravagant fool in all the Bible. He was a perpetual adulterer, a perpetual polygamist, an idolater, and a murderer. Or at least you could say, well, he was exercising his civil authority as king, and the king does not bear the sword in vain. You may, but there is some twisted motivations in all of this. And guess what we don't see anywhere in 1 Kings? We don't see any directions from God. We don't see anyone, calling upon God. If God's name is used, it's almost used as a cover for their own selfish actions. God's people, those who believe in the true God. I know this goes against the way Christians love to paint the picture, because look, the whole reason we are saved by an imputed righteousness is because we're still sinners, right? We're not saved by an infused. We're saved by an imputed. So God declares us to be that which we're not. We are sinners who are declared to be righteous. We are saved because of an imputed righteousness. Because if we're not saved by an imputed righteousness, then our actions would be very much involved and our salvation. But none of our actions have anything to do with our salvation. I know people love to say your actions prove your salvation, but actions can't prove an imputed righteousness because it's imputed. It's simply accredited to your account. I know people like to say when you become a Christian, you're a new creature. Old things have passed away. All things have become new. No, that is true of you positionally. Practically, not all things are new because you still have a sinful nature. So God's people do violent, vicious, sinful acts. We see it throughout church history. And I think one of the most evil things we do, one of the most evil things we do is we are so good at using the Bible, using God, using Jesus, using all religious things, theological things, biblical things, spiritual things to wrap around and disguise our own selfish motivations. Our own ungodly motivations, our desire for revenge, our desire for vengeance, our desire to destroy someone. But we will always wrap it up in some language like, oh, this is just righteous indignation. This is just righteous anger. And I'm worried about God's glory, and I'm worried about justice, and I'm worried about holiness. And what you're all doing is you're just acting on your own selfish impulse, and you destroy people, and you take people down, and all kinds of ways, justifying it and acting all super spiritual. Everybody, a lot of people want to go to 1 Kings 2 and say, well, they're godly people doing godly things. These are sinful people with very conflicted motives here. Very conflicted motives. Joab's dead. Solomon now has taken out 2 people. No point. Was there any mercy given? Any court? No mercy, no attempt for, he just had them killed. Adonijah. Now we heard yesterday the pastor pronounce Adonijah in a completely different way, a way that I'd never heard before, but I'm going to go with Adonijah. And then he kills Joab, the son of Zeruiah. And he used Benaiah as the one who's involved in killing these people. He used Benaiah as basically Solomon's hitman. And then please note, Benaiah then is put to, then the king put Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, in the place over the army. And I think I've heard some people pronounce that different as well. So if my way of saying it's different than okay. But all that's irrelevant. You get the basic idea of who, we're keeping the name somewhat straight. What do we take from this? I think once again, I'm going to just continue to put forth my hypothesis. Solomon being chosen as the one to write Proverbs, these little statements about wisdom, to me, Solomon serves as the counterpoint, as the contrast to the wisdom. Solomon is being used by God as a tool. Hey, you're going to write these words of wisdom, but you're always going to serve as the picture of the extravagant fool. Because you're an extravagant fool. You say, but Solomon or David are both declared righteous. Well, they're declared righteous because of imputed righteousness. That's why David shows up. Again, we talked about this yesterday in Romans chapter 4, which I think is absolutely important for us to remember. Romans chapter 4, verse 1. Remember, this is a very important section. What then shall we say that Abraham, our father, has found according to the flesh? For if Abraham was justified by works, he would have something to boast about, but not before God. For what does the scripture say? Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. Now to him who works, the wages are not counted as grace, but as debt. But to him who does not work, but believes on him who justifies the ungodly, his faith is accounted for righteousness, just as David also describes the blessedness of the man to whom God imputes righteousness apart from works. David is declared to be righteous, not because he was, but because he believed, and it's accounted to him for righteousness. Solomon may be declared to be righteous. He wasn't. He was an ungodly serial adulterer, polygamist, idolater, and had people murdered for very, very questionable reasons. Lot is declared to be righteous. He clearly wasn't. Abraham, that's, I think it's in some ways, it's powerful that Abraham or that Solomon, this man who is, you say, well, he was declared to be the wisest. Well, we're going to talk about that. I think his wisdom was restricted to a very specific areas for the most part, right? And I think in those specific areas, he demonstrated great wisdom, but in other areas of life, he clearly did not demonstrate great wisdom. If he was demonstrating great wisdom, then why the serial adultery, polygamy, idolatry, and then even some of these decisions to murder and kill these people? They're very questionable. So why Solomon? Because Solomon is the counterpoint. Here's this beautiful book of wisdom that God used Solomon to write. If we believe he's writing under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, Solomon is the tool, the vessel to which God conveys his wisdom to us. And to contrast that wisdom, he gives us Solomon as the one who writes it, because Solomon is the counterpoint, the contrast to it. And guess what we can see? When we read Proverbs, we see the wisdom that we know we should behave by, we should act on, we should think that way. But you know what we do? We have more in common with Solomon, who is the extravagant fool. This whole section in 1 Kings 2 and all of these killings, there's some messed up stuff going on there. Now, I know it's usually going to be men are like, well, he made the right decision because if you're going to maintain your throne, you've got to kill your enemies. That's the right way to do it. Well, then don't then turn around and say, God put him there. God's our defender and God's our shield. No, because you're saying, hey, God, I know you're going to help me out, but you just step back because God, where does God even show up in this section? No. This is men protecting their position and their power through very carnal and earthly means, which is putting people to death. And some of the motives I don't think are even that pure. David wanting Joab killed, man, what he did to me, what he did for you. What do you think of all of it? Now, I'm just trying to challenge the way this is typically handled. And I thought yesterday what was great is even though that pastor may not be as, he may not be as forceful as I am about the negativity here, even he admitted yesterday, this is like reading what the mob would do. Even he had to admit it. Even he had to see some of this questionable. Now, when he asked his congregation about it yesterday in that sermon review, you had the one man like, well, David is a man after God's own heart. And he tried to just paint all of David's actions as if they were pure as the new morning snow, right? That's the way he tried to paint it. Someone else in the congregation was like, hey, wait, but let's not forget Joab. Joab helped cover up David's affair. Let's not forget everything about Joab here. And it's almost like David needed Joab. And then when David no longer needed Joab, he wanted Joab dead. And then Solomon uses David's excuse to have him killed. But is Solomon killing him because of those reasons? He tries to make it sound so godly, but he wants him done because Joab had the audacity to defect over to Adonijah. But Adonijah's dead. So why doesn't he call Joab in and have a conversation about the situation? Why does he say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's see if we can come to some compromise. Let's see. You can tell me what you think. News.if@yahoo.com. That's news.if@yahoo.com. That's news.if@yahoo.com. Now, I hope that gets us a little closer to why Solomon. Hopefully a lot of that helps you with your quiz that you're supposed to be working on. Don't forget, you're supposed to be listening to sermons on Proverbs. I know we haven't even got into a Proverbs sermon yet. We're getting closer. We're going to have to do another one of these and figure out how what is he going to do with Shimei? And Shimei, that whole story is, David said he wouldn't kill the guy. And then David wants him dead. That story is to me, that was the one that was most troubling to me until because I'd forgotten some of those things about Joab. We will see how it all plays out. So as we started, we will end. The good news, this has been the most successful month of May for the podcast, for the Sermons 2.0 app, Church One app, and the Sermon Audio website. We were notified today by Spreaker, 250,000 downloads. So that was good. For Sermon Audio, we're getting close to 8,000. I thank you for every download and every stream. I greatly appreciate it. Of course, if you do in any way find anything that we do in our approach to be beneficial, you can go to theologycentral.net, hit the donate tab, or right there using the Church One app, you can hit the give tab. If you're on the Sermon Audio website, type in Theology Central Broadcast, you can hit the give tab there. The Sermons 2.0 app, hit the give tab, and we appreciate it. No matter how small the gift may be, it goes to cover the cost for broadcasting because, well, all of this costs money to do so. So we appreciate it. If you don't, that's okay. And yeah, we'll see. Now, we've had a very successful May. I have a strong feeling we're not going to have such a successful June. And the reason why is I think people don't like looking at some of these texts and being confronted with the rawness and the realness and the ugliness and the conflicted motivations found within the text. But I'm telling you, people, to whitewash it, to just cover it in a robe of fake righteousness, to turn these people into flannel graphs for Sunday school. So, we turn them into one-dimensional like superheroes. I think we cheapen the text. And I think, you know what? We no longer can see ourselves in the text. Or we have to convince ourselves we see ourselves in the text in the faces of all these made-up heroes that we've made up ourselves. All the people in the Bible are real people with feet of clay. They're sinners. They are conflicted. They have horrible times, motivations. They're wrong. They do horrible things. And I hate to say it, when you look at them, you're looking right at yourself. That's why we have to cling to an imputed righteousness, because our practical righteousness, no matter how godly you want to pretend you are, you strip away all of the pretense. You strip away all the fake robes of self-righteousness. You're going to get down to a sinner at your very core. You are a sinner in your motivations and your desires. Your sin may not be as prevalent externally, but you're a sinner internally. And we need to be confronted with the reality of who we are so that we'll be broken and humbled, and we'll take the imputed righteousness of Christ and be truly grateful for it. And stop pointing everyone to what we do, I do. If you want proof of my salvation, look to what Christ did. If you go to 1 John or any book and say, you have to do this to prove you're saved, you know what I'm going to tell you? Christ did all of that for me perfectly. Don't look for my imperfection to prove my salvation. Look to Christ's perfection to prove my salvation, because by faith, his works and obedience are imputed to my account. David needed imputed righteousness. Solomon needed imputed righteousness. Abraham needed imputed righteousness. Sarah needed imputed righteousness. Joseph, Jacob, you name it. Daniel, just go through anyone in the Bible. Elijah, Elisha, you go through them. Isaiah, Jeremiah, go through anybody. Jonah, all of them. It needed to be imputed righteousness. You can email me, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. I feel like I probably messed up 50 things in all of that. See, I need my wall with all of the names and lines drawn here and lines drawn. Maybe I would have actually kept it straight. I tried to keep it as straight as possible. I think one point I felt like I was calling Solomon Absalom, or I was calling Solomon David. I know I misspoke somewhere in it. So for anything I messed up, hopefully I clarified it after. All right. Thanks for listening. Everyone have a great evening. God bless.